Straight ahead, final push. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump come to Texas during early voting to discuss their very different priorities. Senate battle. Both Senate candidates appear with their presidential contenders, marking the first time Congressman Colin Allred is on stage with the Vice President. We'll discuss the strategy behind that. And heating up, more current and former Dallas City leaders are joining the opposition to 3 ballot propositions in Dallas. We'll speak with 3 former mayors and the head of the Dallas Hero Initiative about what they think is best for the city. Good Sunday morning to you from Austin. I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics starts now. Hello and welcome. We've got a lot to get to on this Sunday morning, and we took Eye on Politics on the road to Austin because we covered former President Donald Trump's visit to Texas, where he addressed reporters and Senator Ted Cruz joined him. On the same day, Vice President Kamala Harris campaigned in Houston, where Senate candidate Colin Allred spoke. Their stops during early voting and with more than a week before Election Day came as somewhat of a surprise because Texas is not a battleground state, but it is becoming more competitive. Both the Vice President and former President came here to discuss very different issues as they make their final push toward Election Day. Harris and Allred emphasized abortion rights, while Trump and Cruz discussed border security and crimes committed by migrants. The Vice President did an interview with author and motivational speaker Brene Brown for her podcast, and the former President did an interview on the podcast with Joe Rogan.
What Kamala Harris has done on our border is cruel, it's vile, and it's absolutely heartless.
Inside a hangar at Austin's airport and before hundreds of supporters, former President Donald Trump blasted Vice President Kamala Harris's record on illegal immigration.
Her abolition of our border should disqualify her for even running.
Federal records show there have been a record 8 million apprehensions of migrants along the southern border during the Biden-Harris administration. But since President Biden issued an executive order to tighten the asylum laws, the numbers of migrants crossing illegally have plummeted to their lowest levels during his term. Even so, Trump said crimes committed by migrants have become worse, including the rape and murder of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungare of Houston, allegedly by 2 members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. Her mother spoke about her family's pain.
And now I will forever be a grieving mother, and my son will forever be a grieving brother who will no longer get to grow up with his sister. Kamala Harris has never reached out to me.
Since we're the party of common sense, there's no common sense to an open border, and I will stop this nightmare immediately.
From here, the former president went to do an interview with Joe Rogan, whose podcast reportedly has nearly 15 million followers, many of them young men who analysts believe could make the difference during this very tight race against Vice President Harris. Also here, Senator Ted Cruz, whose appearance with Trump came on the same day as his Democratic challenger, Congressman Colin Allred, appeared with the Vice President in Houston to push for abortion or reproductive rights in Texas. So I'm wondering, what's your thought about that and your level of concern about them going all in on the abortion?
Yeah, look, I think it's fantastic. When I saw the announcement that Colin Allred is going to appear with Kamala Harris in Houston today, that they are embracing and they're running as one ticket. I actually retweeted it on X. I said, I'm Ted Cruz and I approve this message. You want the very simple contrast? You got the contrast.
Jim Henson of the Texas Politics Project at UT Austin spoke with us about the significance of Trump's visit here.
Joe Rogan has a big listenership among a prized demographic in this presidential election, and that is young men. Decent amount of data and lots of polling suggesting that Trump has a big advantage among young men, and particularly here, young men who don't necessarily usually turn up to vote. And so it's a big target.
As we mentioned, Vice President Kamala Harris held a campaign rally in Houston along with Democratic Senate candidate Colin Allred and some Texas women who have come out and supported Allred. They had to leave Texas during their troubled pregnancies to get an abortion.
Men across across America do not want to see their daughters and wives and sisters and mothers put at risk because their rights have been taken. I see the men here, and I thank you. The men of America don't want this. Right here, you who are ground zero in the fight for reproductive freedom, we must be loud, we must organize, we must mobilize, we must energize the people.
If you are singularly responsible for taking away a fundamental freedom from Texas women because you think you know better than Texas women and their families and their doctors, and you put in place this abortion ban, and you celebrate this abortion ban, you introduce at the national level 5 times a nationwide abortion ban, then you have to lose your job. And everything is bigger in Texas, but Ted Cruz is too small for Texas. He's too small. He's too small for Texas. You know what small people do? Is when you lose an election, you think, you know what, I'm going to try and overturn that election.
So let's take a look at the Real Clear Politics average of polls here in Texas. In the latest 5 polls listed, former President Trump leads Vice President Harris by 6 percentage points, 51.6% to 45.6%. The Texas Senate race is more competitive. Senator Cruz leads Congressman Allred by 4.2 percentage points, 49.6% to 45.4%. Congressman Allred's decision to campaign with Vice President Kamala Harris is a change in strategy. Until now, he's not even mentioned her name during his campaign appearances. We discussed all this with SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson.
So the decision by Allred to actually do a joint rally with Harris is a strategically notable one. Now, clearly, it's driven by issues, not by Harris herself, in the sense that if you look at Colin Allred's advertising, abortion is the primary issue that he's talking about. And so given that that's the theme and focus of this rally, I think clearly he wants to associate himself with that and try to capitalize on that issue in the same way that Kamala Harris is doing. But given that Harris is highly likely to lose this state, it's an interesting strategic decision for him to have the visuals of appearing at a rally with Harris. And, you know, it's likely something that Ted Cruz's campaign will stress down the stretch, trying to emphasize how much Allred and Harris are 2 peas in a pod. It's a tough strategic decision. Clearly, he and his people have decided that they think they have more to gain by really stressing the abortion issue down the stretch than they have to lose by being visually associated with Kamala Harris. But it's likely strategically a close call, and I could have seen him tactically and strategically going either way on this.
While Texas is not in play, let's talk about the 7 presidential battleground states that are. The Real Clear Politics average of polls shows former President Trump leading by a very tight margin in each of the states for a second week in a row. In Arizona, Trump leads the vice president by 1.5 percentage points, ever so slightly higher than last week. In Nevada, he increased his lead a little bit from last week to 0.7 percentage points. Trump's biggest margin comes in Georgia, where he's now 2.2 percentage points ahead of Harris. In the Midwest, Wisconsin, Trump has the slightest of leads at 0.2 percentage points. And Michigan is really tight as well now, with Trump 0.2 percentage points, which is down from last week. In Pennsylvania, Trump is at 0.6 percentage points ahead of Vice President Harris, and in North Carolina, he leads the vice president by 0.8 percentage points, down slightly from last week. More current and former Dallas city leaders are speaking out against 3 ballot propositions that would change the city's charter. Coming up, 3 former Dallas mayors tell me why they think the proposals are bad for the city, and one of the prime backers of the propositions responds when Eye on Politics returns. Welcome back to Eye on Politics from Austin. Back in Dallas, the political battle over 3 propositions to change the city's charter is heating up. Dozens of current and former mayors, city council members, Dallas County leaders, and state representatives representing the city and other civic leaders are coming together to voice their opposition to what's called the Dallas Hero Initiative. Last weekend, former mayors joined city leaders at a news conference and then went into the neighborhoods knocking on doors to spread their message against Propositions S, T, and U. The Dallas Police Association joined other police associations and the Dallas Firefighters Association in opposing the measures. Proposition S would change the city charter to allow a Dallas resident to file a lawsuit against the city to require city officials to comply with the city charter and ordinances. Proposition T would allow a survey of residents to determine whether the city manager could be fired or receive a bonus. And Proposition U would require the city to increase the number of police officers to 4,000 and maintain that, among other things. Backers of the Dallas Hero Initiative are pushing their message on digital billboards around the city. We spoke with three former Dallas mayors, Laura Miller, Ron Kirk, and Tom Leppert at Clyde Warren Park.
The reason we're all here is that, frankly, they would just cripple our city's ability to be able to effectively manage itself, to do business, and pay for our basic services. Because creating a world in which we're going to hamstring the council from making thoughtful budget decisions, as well as open up every public employee, including our hardworking police and fire, to litigation over every measure, is just a prescription for inertia, and it'll be impossible to provide the services we've all come to love, as well as to attract businesses like Mayor Leppert, who moved this company here 20 years ago, providing thousands of jobs.
Mayor Miller.
You know, look where we're sitting right now. We're sitting in Clyde Warren Park, which is a product of a Dallas City Council, your elected officials that brought this here. Ron brought the American Airlines Center. Tom brought the Convention Center Hotel. My city council spent years trying to get old office buildings that were vacant into residences, and now we went from 600 people living downtown to 15,000. So all of this takes time, energy, money, and flexibility. And what this Proposition S and T and U, what they're going to do is take away all the flexibility, and they're going to take away the money. Councils need to be able to make decisions and prioritize taxpayer funds to create what we have done over 44 years, 37 council members, former council members spanning 44 years, continuous service to this city, are opposing STU.
Mayor Leppert.
I come from a business background, and I can tell you the business environment is very much opposed to these three propositions, because they understand, as Ron and Laura said, that this is going to hurt business. It's going to hurt the opportunities for our city to continue to grow and prosper economically.
So let me ask you, because when you hear the other side, the Dallas Hero, the people behind these initiatives, they say crime is out of control. The council has failed to do its job in hiring more police. You've been in city leadership positions. So what do you say to that? They just say on the face of it, this is the only solution to get the city where it needs to be.
All three of us are concerned about crime. You would see all of us being very much in favor of public safety, but let's put a dose of reality in this first of all. There was recently a survey that was done of all the large major cities. Dallas, both by its residents and by visitors, was ranked as the safest city. We have seen over the course of the last several years Dallas outperform all other major cities in terms of the crime statistics. All of us are in favor of adding police officers. During my term, we added more police officers than any city in this nation over the last 75 or 100 years as a city of any significant size. So I'm for putting more police officers on the street. But the key is we've got to do it right. And these proposals are not well thought out well. They don't do it right.
And the current city council has allocated the funding in the current budget to hire 250 new officers, to increase the salaries of the officers, to hire equipment and guns and all the things that they need to keep us safe. So this is not an issue that is being ignored. And most importantly, this last week, both the Dallas Police Association and the Dallas Firefighters Association came out strongly opposed to ST and U.
We also spoke with Pete Morocco, Executive Director of the Dallas Hero Initiative in downtown Dallas.
This is a solution. It is setting a floor in the charter that matches the law and gives the people the power to enforce the law. If the city is going to continue to break the law, then we need to empower citizens to hold them accountable. Look, this coalition is very strange. It's very odd to see. And look, we hear from a lot of rank and file police officers who are furious about the idea that a few people in the leadership of the DPA have aligned with Dominique Alexander. Like, how can they explain that to their rank and file? I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that question. We love our police and we support all of our police. These are some questions that I don't have the answer to. But I do know that building a strong police force is definitely complicated. It's going to take many years. But many leaders in Dallas have done this in the past. And so our leaders just need to get a solution going.
When I spoke with Mayor Leppert about this, former Mayor Leppert, he said that, you know, under his leadership, they increased the number of officers.
400 a year.
But that was a little different time back then in the sense of you had a lot of people who were willing to do it.
Still Dallas, though. See, this is where I disagree. I think that Dallas is still the gold standard. We believe that Dallas is a gold standard city. We believe we are a best-in-class city. You have a mayor who achieved that, and he addressed attrition, right? And then you have the next mayor came in and blamed a lot of the loss that then he had on the prior mayor. All of this is just political minutia, and at the end of the day, we are just people who want a solution for the people of Dallas.
So let's talk about the specifics here.
Sure.
Because last time you and I spoke, and one of the ballot propositions has a goal. Basically, the city would have to have 4,000 police officers and maintain that level.
Right.
And timing.
What's required by law?
Timing. Well, you keep saying that. Is it really
It's
an
an
ordinance,
ordinance.
or is it really just a goal of the city?
No, it's an ordinance. Yeah.
So, given that, how long is it going to take realistically? Are you setting a 1-year timeline? Because no one says that's even realistic.
Not at all. And anybody who continues saying that is completely misrepresenting
So what is your
the facts.
timeline?
We have consistently stated that we believe this can be responsibly achieved in between 3 to 5 years. That is exactly what Mayor Leppert did. He is increasing the police force with 400 new recruits per year with a net increase of 250 officers per year. Why would people come up with alarmist language about increasing the police force at exactly the same pace that Mayor Leppert already achieved? So the bottom line is, I think that if we really want to look at the facts of what the opposition is doing, I'm more interested than I was ever before. We had no interest in sort of pulling the thread and following the money of the opposition and understanding why their animus is so strong about this. But at the end of the day, stuff is starting to come out. We're starting to understand better why Mayor Rawlings wants to rewrite history, and about the fact that he drove a net 800 officer loss. That's huge. There needs to be an explanation for that. There needs to be a public discussion about that. We are not interested in arguing backwards, though. Our propositions are about the future. It's about getting police.
Well, the fact that Mayor Leppert opposes all of these three ththings.
Sure.
Doesn't that say something?
Well, I'm very interested to hear what that says. I've asked Mr. Leppert many times. I said, hey, his classic line is, it's not the, he's got all these little catchy political phrases where he says, it's not the what, it's the how. You know, it's not what you're doing, it's the consequences. Well, tell us what that is, Tom. Tell us what you're proposing. Tell us what's wrong with it. Here's our how. We've given you our how. It's essentially modeled after exactly what he did. So what's your story, Tom? What is your how? Why can't you get 8 city council members to come to a resolution just to get this city back in compliance with the law? So why can't we have a minimum staffing of 3 officers per every 1,000 citizens? And right now we only have 2.2. Why don't we have 8 city council members that can do that?
Coming up next, you have questions, we have the answers about voting in Texas when Eye on Politics returns. Early voting continues on this Sunday, but check your specific county before going because each county has a different time. Then starting tomorrow through Friday, November 1st, early voting begins at 7 a.m. and ends at 7 p.m. Sarah Jenkins has this week's brief with more answers about voting in Texas.
One of the first steps in voting is knowing your polling location. visit the Texas Secretary of State's website. Use the voter lookup tool to check your registration status and find your polling location by entering your details. You can also contact your local county election office directly. They can provide you with information about your polling location and any other voting-related queries. Your voter registration card, if you have one, typically includes your polling location. What do you need to bring to vote in Texas? You will be asked to show a photo ID to vote in Texas. Acceptable forms include a Texas driver's license, a state election ID certificate or state personal ID card, a Texas handgun license or U.S. military ID with photograph, a citizenship certificate with photo, or U.S. passport. Any registered voter can vote early, as long as your voter registration is current and valid. You can vote early during the designated early voting period, which began October 21st and runs through November 1st.
That's all for Eye on Politics and our road trip to Austin this week. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening at CBS News Texas. We'll see you next week. From all of us here, have a great weekend.